seated. Let's go ahead and take our Bibles here this morning and let's go to the book of 1 Samuel, chapter number 17. 1 Samuel, chapter number 17. Today we're going to look at probably one of the most familiar stories in Scripture. It's the battle between David and Goliath. And it's funny, even the secular world is familiar somewhat with the story of David and Goliath. I've heard of football matchups, and they talk about how one team is like David and one team's like Goliath. In other words, it doesn't look like it's going to be very good for the one team and so forth. But that's kind of the picture you get here, because it's a story of an unlikely outcome from every human perspective. David should have never defeated a veteran Philistine warrior who stood nearly 10 feet tall. It should have never happened, but it will. Or it did, at least, in the Scriptures. David displayed tremendous courage as he held an impeccable belief that God would help him silence the arrogant threats of Goliath that was being spewed against God himself and the nation of Israel. Maybe today you yourself are facing some giants, or a giant of some kind, that seems a little overwhelming. Doesn't seem like you can defeat it. Doesn't seem like it's ever going to leave life. But there is hope if we get God employed into the battle. I think we all face some sort of giant right now. I'm sure you, maybe it's something you have at work, maybe it's a personal relationship, maybe it's just even seeing somebody saved that you really like to see saved. And it's like, I don't know how they're ever going to get saved. I don't know how they're ever going to turn to Christ. And it'd be an utmost miracle if it happened. But those are the kinds of things that God is looking to specialize in. God's looking to step into if we give him the opportunity, just like David did. You know, those giants, though, they can cause us a lot of fear. And sometimes they cause us to hold back and not even try to do what God wants us to do, though, in circumstances, because they appear unbeatable. But what's interesting when we see in the story is that God can topple anything, even with the smallest of things that we may possess in our hand, like David, as we'll see here in a moment. Let's look at this story a little bit closer. We'll look at most of the chapter, but we'll start off reading just a section first. 1 Samuel 17, verse 1. It says, Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shuco, which belonged to Judah, and pitched between Shuco and Ascah in Ephesian Denton. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched it by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on the mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. And he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam. And his spear had weighed 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing a shield was before him. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are you come out to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me, and to kill me, then will we be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve him. And the Philistine said, I will defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man, that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse. And he had 8 sons, and the man was among men of an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. And the names of his 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and next unto him was Abinadab, and the third Shammah. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren. carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fared, and take your pledge. Now Saul and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. We'll look at more of this story here today, but we're going to talk about the story of David and Goliath. Let's pray first. Father, we thank you for preserving this story in Scripture as it shows us many eternal truths. And Lord, though we don't have time to look at every one of them today, I pray that the one that you led me to expound upon will be helpful for everyone here. That you'll meet a spiritual need, give some encouragement wherever it may be in their lives to face the giants that they face. Thank you, Lord God, for this time of study. We pray you bless it in Jesus' name. Amen. You know, Israel, under the leadership of its first king Saul, finds itself again in battle with the Philistines. The Philistines, as a people group, were a constant thorn in the side of the Israelites. They're just constantly causing them problems. The Philistines themselves were a confederacy of 5 city-states known as Ekron, Gath, Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Gaza. In fact, some of those cities even still exist to this day over in Israel. You can go and visit Ashdod, Ashkelon, and Gaza, and so forth. They existed in an area close to what we know today as the Gaza Strip, and a section that sits around the Mediterranean coast. They worship a false deity or a false god by the name primarily of Dagon. They also were Baal worshippers, but Dagon seems to be their primary god that they gave allegiance to. Dagon himself was known as the fish god, which was, of course, appropriate as they lived on the coastal areas, and he was also known as the god of fertility. They had evidently had no interest, though, in worshiping the true God of heaven and earth, the God of Israel. We just, a few weeks ago, looked at the life of Samson, how Samson lived during a time when the Philistines had oppressed the nation of Israel and actually had them under tribute. The Philistines were were over them in authority, if you will, and they suppressed the Israelites severely. They were never really good friends with Israel by any means. And if you would follow the story on into the book of 1 Samuel, you will see that also there was a time when the Philistines took the Ark of the Covenant, which is a very precious piece of furniture in that tabernacle, which would eventually become the temple. The Ark of the Covenant was synonymous with the presence of God within the nation of Israel itself. There's a lot connected with that. But as our chapter opens up, the Philistines are at it again, and they're invading Israelite lands, and Saul and his army have now come out against them. But things weren't looking good. Both armies were on the sides of a valley known as the Valley of Elah. Been to the Valley of Elah before, where this took place, and there's a brook that was dried up there. And as we're going to see, David picks up 5 smooth stones. I picked up 5 smooth stones myself. I've got them buried amongst my junk somewhere, but I still have them. And anyways, it was neat to contemplate this story, thinking about how the Israelite army was standing on this side and the Philistines on this side, and that open grassy area where Goliath would have came out and stood and bellowed as he did in this passage. He walks out in the midst of this valley and presents this great challenge to the Israelite army in verse 8. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel and said unto them, Why are you come out to set your battle in array? You know, he wasn't very bashful by any means. He was very bold. He was big. Big and bold. He came out in the middle of that valley. And let them just know, what do you think you guys are doing coming here against us? And of course, he tried to show them a representation of how difficult it would be to defeat their army. He himself being a giant. He himself being a very difficult man to handle. He says, Am not I a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. And of course, he presents the challenge that if that man comes and beats him, the Philistines will be their servants, will be under their authority and rule. And if the flip happens, he wins, then the Israelites would be under their rule. They would be servants, or in other words, slaves to these people. Now, the mere size of Goliath sent shockwaves of fear into the Israelite camp. It's very obvious in verse 11. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed. and greatly afraid. I mean, it shook him up pretty bad. It shook him up extremely bad. It was difficult. I mean, you're looking at this man, and I don't know what the average height of the average Jew was in those days. Maybe it was, maybe it was 5.5, maybe 6 feet. But you're looking at a guy that was at least anywhere between 3.5 and 4 feet taller than the average man. I mean, you talk about a monster. Just to get an idea, if you know on the height of an average basketball rim, it's 10 feet in the air. And to think that guy practically hits his head on the rim. Back when I was a kid, we used to always, whoever could touch the rim, we always thought that was a pretty big thing. And we'll snap the rim and so forth. I mean, but it took some effort to get up that high. But that guy got hit his head pretty much on that rim. I mean, he was giant. And of course, you think about him, how he filled out as a person. I don't know if you know who Shaquille O'Neal is. He used to play in the NBA. He was a monster of a guy, 7'1". He's like 300. I think at his peak, he's like 320 pounds. I mean, he was just a giant of a man. I think Leah, I can't remember if it was Leah or one of your relatives, Jesse, her dad saw him walking around the Mall of America and walked up to him. And Leah's dad's maybe about that high, about 5'8", 5'9", 5'10". Oh, is he 6? Okay, so he'd be about here. I mean, he had to look up at God and say, hey, Shaq, whoa. I mean, that guy's a monster, even compared to some of the other players in the NBA. To think of that guy would still be much shorter and much smaller than what Goliath was. I mean, this guy was a monster. Very, very intimidating, to say the least, from a human perspective. And it created a lot of panic within the Philistine, or the Israelite army, as day after day, for 40 days, twice a day, this guy would come stomping out and just spewing his garbage all over. If he had a PA system, could you imagine that? If he could just stand in the middle of this valley and just say whatever he wanted, as often as he wanted, to everybody, and his mere words froze the courage of all these people. Verse 16, and the Philistine drew near morning and evening and presented himself 40 days. This went on quite a while. What you have here is the people of God absolutely defeated. I mean, you got to remember here, they were scared and even unwilling to fight. Every time he presented himself, look at verse 24, and all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were sore afraid. Were sore afraid. There hadn't even been a battle fought yet. They hadn't marched up and locked horns with any of the Philistines yet. They didn't have to. Old Goliath just had to show up every morning and night, just remind them his size, and then the Israelite army would hightail it to some cover. And it would just go on like that for quite a while. See, what you have here is, though there hasn't even been a battle fought, no arrow shot, no sword swung, the Israelites were slaves to their own fears. They were slaves, really. They couldn't overcome the loudness of this Goliath. Goliath had conquered them by just his mere intimidating presence, without having really proven anything. Sometimes we get intimidated by giants we perceive in life, don't we? We get so intimidated. The world tries to intimidate us from living out the faith that we are supposed to live out. Boy, it sure does. If you try to live a godly life, you're kind of told that you're out of step with this world. You're in the minority. You're uneducated. You're a bigot. You're all this kind of nonsensical stuff. And all it is a bunch of Goliath spewing garbage. And sometimes we believe it. We're like the children of Israel. We're intimidated. by these giants. Sometimes it's the world, sometimes it's a trial of a giant. A giant can be a trial in our lives, or just an overwhelming task, or a stronghold of sin. You know, these giants that exist, that, again, it's like, I don't even want to try to do them because I just don't see how it's possible. That's the way the Israelite army was. They just didn't see how it was possible. I mean, that guy was big. He big, he ugly, he probably stunk. I mean, he was everything. Can you imagine? It's something that just overwhelms us, though, to the point we don't see any path to victory. In essence, we just settle on being a slave to those giants. Really, that's what it amounts to. We kind of just settle on being a slave. Well, I just can't beat it. Just not going to try it. You know, in essence, we just kind of surrendered ourselves to it. It's just easier to live placating the giant than to go up against it. But it's funny is the giant never stops, does it? The giant just doesn't stop and go home and life goes on. No, the giant just keeps coming back every single day. In this case, it was twice a day. And it didn't stop for 40 days. The giants won't stop either unless you take them on. And that's a very sad, depressing, and discouraging way to live, too. And we need not to live like that, though. If we follow David's example of courage as he took on the giant and with God's help, pulled down an obstacle nobody thought was possible. And God can do the same thing for us today, too. First off, let's look at what I call the cause. The cause. As we consider this story of David and Goliath, I think one of the big driving factors for David was the fact that he had a cause in mind. A cause that was bigger than himself. David shows up on the scene here after the Israelite army had endured 40 days of Goliath's vindictive words. It's been 40 days now since the beginning of Goliath's sea of garbage coming out of his mouth. And David shows up on the scene. Verse 20. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with the keeper and took and went as Jesse had commanded him, and he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage and ran into the army and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have ye seen this man that has come up? Surely, reply Israel, is he come up, and it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king, will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth the Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? The people answered him after this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that killeth him. David, though a young man, though he had not spent an ounce of time in the battle, was greatly bothered by Goliath's blasphemy against God and God's people. It bothered him. It really kind of, it didn't sit well with him. It kind of stoked something in him that got him curious, like, why isn't somebody going out there and dealing with this bozo? Why isn't somebody stepping up to the plate? I mean, this guy just continually comes and makes our God look so small and silly. He continually blasts away. Whatever he wants to say, he says it. And as he heard this beast of a man come out, he witnessed the army of Israel fleeing in utter defeat the minute the giant appeared. I mean, it was like mice running away from a cat. Boom, they're gone. And David, I believe, thought within himself that, this shouldn't be happening. And David evidently had some good training from his dad. I think David understood the history of Israel. I think he understood the purpose of the nation itself. I think he understood that he was God's child. I think he understood that God had chosen his forefathers for a reason, to represent the God of heaven. And David had a heart for God. As a teenager, by the way, he had a heart for God. And he thought with himself, this should not be happening. These Philistines who magnified this false god, Dagon, these Dagonites should not be getting the upper hand. Again, considering all that God had done for the Jews in the past, and how God desired that all the people of the earth may know Him, and that the Jews were the witness of God to the world. And that's what motivated David. See, David was all about the cause of God. God's cause meant much to David. It was all about him. David loved God. That's why he one day be king. In fact, at this point, he was anointed king. But very few knew it. And that really drove David. That was his motivating factor in life. And Goliath's blasphemy against Israel and against God was sending the wrong statement about God in David's mind. Making God look bad. And the army of Israel was making God look bad too by their lack of faith to even try to do something about this guy. There's never a call in here for prayer. There's never a call here to seek advice from the man of God, Samuel. There's nothing like that. They're just sitting there, well, we can't figure it out, so I guess we're just going to have to settle hiding behind the rocks and let this guy just go up and say whatever he wants and do whatever he wants and stomp all over us without even a fight. That worked against the armies of Israel, but it did not work against David. He didn't like God's name being disdained. He didn't like God's glory being robbed. That really got David's goat, as they say. What a God that God's people would be bothered to the point of action like David was in God's cause. It's not right that there are people who haven't gotten the gospel yet. It's not right that there are souls that need to hear Christ in places around the globe that nobody's going to. It's not right that God's name is being disdained in our nation. It's not right. And that would stand up for God and say, you know what, I stand with God. I don't care what other people think. I stand with Him, and I want to do what's right, and I want Him to be honored with my life. We need God's people to be that way. But too often we're like the children of Israel. We're intimidated by all those perceived giants. Verse 28, it says here, Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, Why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. And David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? See, that's what drove David. There's a cause. There's a cause bigger than ourselves out there. So many people's causes are no bigger than themselves. And no wonder they have a life that they don't find a whole lot of fulfillment or joy in. But when you find something that's bigger than yourself to be part of, life all of a sudden becomes a lot more fulfilling, a lot more interesting, a lot more exciting. David was driven to the point of action. Verse 30, it says, And he turned from him toward another and spake after the same manner, and the people answered him again after the former manner. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with the Philistine. Boy, he drove him to action. They drove him to do something. It didn't drive him to sit on the sidelines. It didn't drive him to say, well, I guess maybe somebody will step up and we're just going to have to pray. No, he's like, he saw a need, he got involved. He said, you know what? Nobody's doing anything, so I'll do something about it. I'll step up to the plate. I won't sit here and just kind of shuffle the feet. I want to get involved. I can do something here. God can use me just as he can use anybody else. Why don't I get involved? And he goes up and says to Saul, hey, Saul, have no fear, I'm here. With God's help, he shows up. Saying that. I like what David says, is there not a cause? Is there not a cause? Again, David was consumed with God's cause. May us who know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, been born by the blood of Christ, may we be consumed with God's cause too. May it be something that really motivates us when we get up in the morning. Not how much we're going to fill our bank accounts, and not how much we're going to get for ourselves, and not how much we're going to be able to do to glorify and make ourselves famous, or to heap pleasure upon ourselves, but may it be the cause of God that gets us up every morning and gets us going and drives us so that we can make a difference for now and eternity. That really ought to be our driving goal. If we've been bought by Christ, and we've been born again, and we've been saved, the Bible says that we were bought with a price, that we are not our own. We are His. During the 9:30 Bible class hour, I talked about how we are to be consumed with following the will of God. If you're a born-again Christian, oh yeah, I've been saved, then you ought to be consumed with following God's will for your life, as I should be as well. We all need to be. See, David was consumed with that because he saw the cause bigger than himself, and he got himself involved in it. He never expected to be going up against a giant. But I guess if that's what God needed him to do, that's what he did. You know, we can't let the giants of this world and in our lives keep us shackled down to the point where we don't do what God's wanting us to do. We don't want to keep those giants keeping us shackled down to the point where God is to stand in the eyes of this world. This world needs to see God. Oh boy, does it ever desperately need to see God. But we're too shackled by the giants. The giant just has to say boo, and we get scared. May we have the courage like David who says, you know what, there's a cause out there. There's a cause bigger than me, bigger than myself. Look, when the giants shackle us, that doesn't help anybody. That doesn't help us. It doesn't help the people out there that need to know Christ. You know, we don't want to be shackled by the giants to the point where we hide our Christianity and our jobs and in our school. I'm not saying you have to go out and be weird, but be obnoxious. There's some people that are obnoxious. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm talking about just being genuine and real. And, loving people. And, you see a coworker at work that needs having a hard time, go up and say, hey, I'm praying for you, or something like that. Just doing something to get into their lives that will open up a door. Instead of thinking that the minute I say Jesus, I'm going to get, all hell's going to break loose in my life. That's not true. It hasn't helped anybody. We don't want to be shackled. Nor do we want to be shackled by the giants, and we refuse to exercise faith to what God is leading us to do. Sometimes people really hold back on what God's trying to get them to do because they just see this big giant going, how am I ever going to figure that one out? How am I ever going to do this? How are we going to do this? We're taking on a giant next year with that Mongolia thing. It is a giant. It is a different project I've never been a part of before. But you know what? We got to charge that thing and knock it over. I'm excited what God's going to do next year, and some things coming up down the road here that I got plans I'm working on with other places and so forth. You know what? We want to knock down those giants. We can just say, well, we're not that big of a church. We're not, I don't care how big we ever get, as much as we want to put forth the best effort we can as a church to do something. I think in the end it'll make a difference, and we'll see more folks and get saved and so forth, and that's what we want. But But you know what? Let's not just sit around and wait around for somebody else to do something. Why don't we take up the mantle if we see a need, get involved and do something about it? You know, David, hey, there's a cause. There's a cause. Nobody else is doing anything, and you know what, I guess maybe I can. He had a little bit of courage, intestinal fortitude, as they might call it. He went on. Because he couldn't stand that anymore. He couldn't stand it. And he got some oomph behind it. So I'll go on with it. But secondly, notice there will be the critics. The critics will start coming out too sometimes when you get a little bit too involved in the cause. Whenever a person tries to step out by faith, don't be surprised if the Cold Water Committee shows up. They're a great party group. Never invited, but they always show up. Just, you get excited about something, and well, that'll never happen. Well, we can't do that. Where are you going to get money, Pastor? Are you sure? Maybe we should just hold back a little bit. You know what? Too many Christians hold back. Somebody once, well, put it this way: he'd rather bridle a saddle or a stallion than kick a mule. We want to be the stallion, if you will, at least making some attempts. Better to try and fail than to never try at all. You can appreciate somebody who keeps trying, and if they keep failing, well, that's fine. At least they're learning something. At least they're making an effort, versus somebody that doesn't do anything and likes to sit on the sideline and criticize. That was Elam. We see it first in Elam. David starts talking about going out there against the giant. Elam's like, "Oh, David, why'd you really come out here? I know the naughtiness of your heart." Of course, they always accuse the motives. And then he says, "Where you left those few sheep?" You talk about a little dig. Those little, you're trying to make David look insignificant. Where are those little sheep? We're out here with the big boys. Yeah, you're the big boy, right? Hiding behind the rock for the last 40 days. Yeah, big man, I'm somebody. There's always those cold water people. Elam had been part of the Israelite army the whole time Goliath was mouthing off, and Elam had never at once, at least it appears, made any effort like David is. But the idea of being showed up by his younger brother evidently didn't sit well with him. His pride was hurt. So what does he do? He accuses and he attacks David. It's pathetic on Elam's part, but Elam didn't have the courage David had. It really was a hard issue. In fact, if you go back to 1 Samuel 16, remember, if you know the story, Samuel came to the house of Jesse because God had directed him, because there was a king that he was going to anoint. It would be David. But at first, nobody thought it was David, because he was the youngest. He just oversaw a few sheep. And as the sons of Jesse were presented before Samuel to see if they were chosen, notice verse 6 of 1 Samuel 16. And it came to pass when they were come that he looked on Elam and said, "Surely the Lord's anointed is before him." Now, evidently, Elam must have looked the part, looked kingly, if you will. Maybe he was big, good looking. Maybe he carried himself with an air of confidence. Maybe he sounded confident. But God said no. God said no. Verse 7 says, "But the Lord said unto him, Samuel, look not on his countenance." Don't look at what this guy looks like on the outward. On the height of the stature. Evidently, maybe it was taller. I don't know. "Because I have refused him. For the Lord seeth not as a man seeth. For a man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart." And Elam's heart comes out of birth in chapter 17, doesn't it? He wasn't big and bad and bold as what Samuel wasn't the leader. He wasn't consumed with God's cause as much as his youngest brother David was. His heart was really revealed in a time of crisis. And God knew what would come out of David. That's why he was initially chosen as king. But critics generally have an insecurity issue is what it is. Usually it's an insecurity. Sometimes it's a fear that power is going to be taken away from them, or somebody's going to show them up, or something like that. And it drives it, and they start getting real critical. Real critical. And they'll come up, they'll strain at gnats, and what's amazing is they'll swallow a big camel in the process. They're always tearing somebody down because they want to lift themselves up. They don't want anybody trying something that they themselves wouldn't even attempt to do because they have no faith. The critic always criticizes somebody, oftentimes, over something they aren't even doing themselves. There's a man who came up to D.L. Moody once and criticized him for the way he went about winning souls. Well, Moody listened courteously and said to him, you know what, I don't like the way I win souls either. What do you do? the man said, kind of mumbled, well, I don't do it. In which Moody replied back and said, well, I like the way I win souls over the way you don't win souls. Reminds me of another story of Colonel George Washington Goethals. He was the man responsible for the completion of the Panama Canal. But during that whole process, he faced incredible challenges with the climate and with the geography of the land to build that canal. But his biggest challenge was the growing criticism back home for those who predicted he would never finish the project. Never come to be. Finally, the colleague asked him, why don't you answer the criticism, General? The guy said, in time. His partner said, when? When I finish the canal. Which he did. One of the greatest feats accomplished of all time. Well, there are people who say, oh, you'll never do it. You'll never do it. You'll never do it. He did it. Eli was just ashamed that he didn't have the faith to do what David was considering. And it played out with his words. Then, of course, there was Saul, verse 32. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. Saul said to David, thou art not able to go against the Philistine to fight with him. For thou art but a youth, and he is a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock, and I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. David said, moreover, the Lord hath delivered me out of the paw of the lion, out of the paw of the bear. He will deliver me out of the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said unto David, go, and the Lord be with thee. Saul wasn't so caustic. He just was shocked to step forward. I'm sure Saul's thinking to himself, you know, one of his best skilled men should be stepping up pretty soon here. They had a shot. In fact, it should have been Saul, really, who would have stepped up, because the Bible says he stood head and shoulders above everybody else. He was a tall guy. He was the biggest guy there, evidently. He wasn't stepping up. But in Saul's mind, I'm sure he was thinking, boy, it's got to be one of these big shots. And all of a sudden, this apparently inexperienced teenager is stepping up to the plate. But there was something different with David, despite his apparent lack of size and skill. He had a courage that was linked to God as he had communicated to Saul, you know what, I took down the lion and the bear with God's help. I have never taken down the lion and the bear. I don't plan to in my life. I can help it. All right. David had some courage. So you're a little pastor. I agree. It just kind of shocked him. Because there was a lot at stake here for Saul, because if David lost, or whoever went up and lost, remember, they submit to the winning team. That wouldn't have fared well for Saul. But after 40 days of nobody else, I mean, Saul was left with nothing to make the choice. I mean, it was like it's him or nothing. It's only a matter of time before they actually just march on him. So I had to give him a shot, I guess. But sometimes what you see in this situation is that you have some of the most unlikeliest people God will use to really make a difference. George Stott was a one-legged school teacher from Scotland. He volunteered for missionary service to China, the China Inland Mission, led by Hudson Taylor. He was interviewed by Taylor and asked why a one-legged man would think of going to China, which he responded, I don't see people with 2 legs going, so I guess I must. And he went to serve for over 20 years, reaching people for Christ in China in the 1800s. Scripture tells us, 2 Chronicles 16:9, that the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth, seeking for those of whom he can show himself strong. I'm looking for people to use. But there's got to be people who are committed to his cause, and willing to have a little courage to step out by faith and meet a need that exists. Let me tell you something. There are needs that exist today that honestly God's just begging. I don't want to make it sound like God's desperate, but God's looking for people to step up to the plate and do something. Because a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm too busy. I can't do it." You know what? God's looking for some people that have a little bit of faith to step out. And David, with a resolute faith, ignores his critics. He could agree with Saul that, yeah, I guess you're right. No, it was a crazy idea. And I said, no, let me at him. Let me at that guy. And he saw what God could do, as we see thirdly, the consummation. Saul attempts to give David some help, of course, verses 38 through 40. He gives him his own armor. He said, all right, go out there, David. Well, remember, Saul was tall. David obviously wasn't as tall as Saul. He tries to put on this armor. It doesn't work. And David says, I can't use this. He instead went with what he knew would work with him. A sling and a stone. 5 stones to be exact, he only uses 1. You know, God doesn't need much to accomplish his purposes, and David did that. David did that. So he took what he knew best. That's all he knew was how to sling and stone. So he went on. Verse 41, we'll read the story here. I'll read it quickly. It says, the Philistine came and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked down and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy and of a fair countenance. This was just an utter show of disdain, really, for this Philistine that they did. They sent out David of all things. It would have really been a knock at this man's pride. And the Philistine said unto David, am I a dog that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. The Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air and unto the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, thou comest to me with sword and with a spear and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. David put his hand in his bag and took thence a stone and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead and he fell down upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine and took his sword and drew it out of the sheath thereof and slew him and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. As we see the consummation of this story, David didn't rely on himself to be the judge. David was smart enough to realize, okay, I obviously have a disadvantage here. said, I need God to help me in this. And he did. And he spoke very clearly to the giant. He said, look, God's going to take you down, not me. I come to you in his name. And he relied on God to empower his weak efforts to accomplish that feat. Because that sling of that stone would not have been as powerful as a sword. But that's all it took. As a result, the Lord got the glory through what took place. In other words, God got all the credit for what took place. The Bible tells us in Ephesians 3:20 that God can do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think. It's a really good thing when people see what only God can do. They say, oh, only God could have done that. And that's what everyone came to realize. David made it clear that was his goal, not his own glory, but God's alone. That all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. That was what he wanted to see happen. That's what was bothering him so bad, that there was this Goliath that was coming and stopping that knowledge from going forward, and actually suppressing it, making God look weak. And he stepped up to the plate and said, I want to defend that. And people saw who God was. They could communicate that God showed up that day. God did show up in a big way. Because none of us can accomplish anything of any significance without God acting on our part. Jesus said very plainly in John 15:5, without me you can do nothing. The branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except he abide in me, or him. And the story of David and Goliath, I believe, was meant to encourage us to be bold in our faith, to live out our commands, the commands that God has for us, even when the Goliaths roar at us. And we may think we're weak, but with God's help, anything is possible. The Bible tells us very plainly in several places that with God, nothing shall be impossible, that all things are possible to him that believe. There was a missionary years ago by the name of William Carey. He's known as the father of modern-day missions. He went out with this attitude: expect great things from God, attempt great things for God. How are we doing today? Are there some Goliaths that are stopping us from doing what God wants us to do? I'm not talking about our self-glory and our promotion and our welfare as much as I am talking about the glory of God. All that stuff falls into place when God's glory is our preeminent cause. But how are we doing today, man? Or is there some giant that's just in the way that we just don't think we can take down? Well, give God the chance. Give him a chance. Take that step. Play it out. And see how God will take whatever simple thing you have in your hand. Take that giant down. So that you can inspire others, like David inspired that Israeli army to go for victory. Amen. Let's stand to our feet.